and to the republic which stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this important discussion. I do not claim to have answers, but I do want to hear from the public to find out what the concerns are and maybe some solutions that the public might have. So with that, I am Leslie Duncan. I've been a commissioner for 6 years, and I've got about 4 more years left. So thank you all for supporting, whoever here did support me. Thank you. And I did, my opponent did reach out and offer his services also for the next 4 years to help me in my endeavor to serve the citizens of Kootenai County. So I appreciate that. We have with us a very, very special guest, KrisAnne Hall. I call her the constitutional attorney, a very brilliant lady. She has been in the Pacific Northwest several times, here in Coeur d'Alene and in Spokane, appearing at different venues. And I just wanted to have her kind of talk to us about some of her experience and some of her knowledge, and just get us kind of going down the right path. Eventually, we'll get to the question of, okay, technology today, we are subject to constant tracking almost if we have a smartphone, if we drive a car, if we drive a newer car, and it just kind of goes on and on. So I just kind of wanted to have that discussion tonight and kind of see how the public feels about that, if they're comfortable with it, or if there's something that we can do as a community to address it. And I don't know if we can change it, or that's what I'm going to hear from you guys tonight. So I really appreciate you coming out tonight. I personally rather be home in my pajamas with my cat, but this is really, really important. So I'm thankful that you came. Ms. Hall, are you kind of ready to get us started?
Sure. I'm very honored to be here, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to speak. I am over here on the East Coast, so it's 9 p.m., and I'm grateful to be able to be here and not suffering from jet lag, because that's the way it would be if I was over there with you guys right now. So I'm very honored for the opportunity to, and for the trust to be able to discuss this issue. I think that the concern about electronic privacy is a very valid one. It's even one that the Supreme Court, our recent Supreme Court, has had to answer and deal with. And when I talk about issues about the privacy of, especially, for example, cell phone data, you have to remember a case called Carpenter v. U.S., which the Supreme Court decided in 2018. And the Supreme Carpenter v. U.S. was about tracking someone's or using someone's cell phone to ping their location, literally track someone. And what had happened was the government had pulled Mr. Carpenter's cell phone records and was tracking his location based on how his cell phone pinged from the cell towers. And the Supreme Court, in the majority opinion, was written by Justice Neil Gorsuch, in which the Supreme Court said that it is not constitutional with a general warrant to track someone's cell phone location without their consent. And this is a very important case. Obviously, there's some details and there's some intricacies because the Supreme Court doesn't issue generalized opinions anymore. Everything is very narrowly tailored, but this is a very, very important Supreme Court opinion when it comes to understanding the government's authority to use these broad sweeping warrants to track us without our consent. And so what that really brings up to me, ought to bring up to mind is the distinction that a lot of Americans don't really even think about anymore, and that is consent. So much of what we do in society these days is done because we consent. And we consent quite often, I say without knowledge, but the reality is it's because we don't read the fine print. And I'll give you an example. So many times, I travel quite often as a matter of what I do. I am, in any given month, in an airport 4 or 5 times, sometimes more, a month. And people are constantly and have consistently signed up for TSA PreCheck or Global PreCheck. And they do so because they don't want to stand in line and because it allows them to not have to take off their shoes and things like that. But what the American people don't realize is that we are deceived and sometimes even bought to provide consent for things that we're not even really aware that we're consenting to. And so when someone signs up for TSA PreCheck or Global PreCheck, which they're pretty much the same thing, and any of those private businesses like Clear and all of that, all of those programs, even the private business programs, are run through the Department of Homeland Security. And so even though they have a private vendor name on them, they're still the Department of Homeland Security. And I actually did a FOIA request, and I've read the regs on these pre-check qualifications and the contracts that people sign. And the most shocking thing is that within those TSA PreCheck, within those Global PreCheck contracts, everyone agrees that they will be subject to what the Department of Homeland Security calls a threat assessment evaluation. Now, when you agree to be subject to a threat assessment evaluation, in that, you literally waive all your rights to a warrant. So where Mr. Carpenter had his locations thrown out of court as evidence, anyone who signs up for TSA PreCheck, anyone who signs up for Global PreCheck, will not be able to claim that they have a right to privacy these things because they signed away their rights. Within the Department of Homeland Security regulations, it literally says you have no right to choose when and how these intrusions on your privacy and the use of your records will be made by the federal government. This means that they can review, all and every bank record, all and every financial transaction in your name, all and every health record, all and every psychological record, any and all court records, traffic tickets, anything that would require a warrant is now free and open access to the federal government. So as we discuss privacy rights and securing our privacy in a digital age, first and foremost, we must be willing to discuss how and when we waive these rights. I rented a car just the other day as I was traveling, and the rental agent said, well, the gas tank is somewhere around 3/4 of a tank, so I'm just going to move it to half a tank, so just return it with half a tank. And then he said, oh, wait, I can't do that. This is a 2024 vehicle. All of that information is automatically routed to my iPad. So we now have vehicles in which all their information can be routed to an iPad. And when you buy that car and you sit in that car, you consent to that. You will consent to having all of people who sign up for Progressive Insurance, or even other insurance companies are doing that now, who agree to get the reduced rate for safe driver as long as they hook their car up to the system or they install that little device. That's a waiver of your rights. That means that anyone in government could subpoena that information from your insurance provider because you've waived your rights to that information. So as we open this discussion, and I'm open to questions for specific things, we have to understand that the primary principle of securing rights is a self-governing principle. We have to be proactive to the securing of our own rights, because other people will value our rights only as much as we do.
Thank you for that. That was some information that I had not, I was not aware of yet. Did you have any questions for her? Sorry, we're getting technical things worked out here.
That's okay. I mean, while you're doing that, there's so many things you can talk about. I mean, the things that most people don't understand about red light cameras. Red light cameras are installed most of the time through in our local governments through federal grants. And when federal grants pay for red light cameras, that comes with an agreement that the federal government will have access to that information. So if you don't want CCTV all over your local government, all over your local community, where not just simply you're being snapped as you run the red light, but a constant feed on those things will go, or at least is accessible upon demand by the federal government based on the grants that are being paid for that. And so these are the kind of things that we really, really have to be aware of, because we have to be the guardians of our own liberty, and stopping it from coming in is infinitely easier than getting rid of it once it's there.
Thank you. All right, we've got a question for you.
Okay.
Hi, KrisAnne. My name is Brian Cleary, and thanks for being with us this evening. I had maybe a more focused question on some of the subject matter you're talking about, which is, can you speak to, just in general, black letter, so to speak, of jurisprudence regarding the use of license plate readers in the United States, and where the lines are forming around that emerging technology in terms of Fourth Amendment rights, and where the lines are drawn in terms of going too far in the use of those license plate readers, such as capturing that data, long-term archiving of that data, storing it in the provider that is providing the software for the cameras and reading them and giving readbacks, such as Motorola and Vigilant Technologies. Can you speak to some of the emerging law that's occurring around that technology?
Are you speaking on data retention or use of the cameras themselves? Because I think you addressed like 4 or 5 different issues in there, and I'm trying to focus on what it is that you're actually looking for.
Well, I think most people would understand it as, the technology. Mm-hmm. Law enforcement has legitimate uses of the technology, but it can cross lines, and sometimes the use of that data beyond just instantaneous capture and a readout, where it is instead being used for long-term tracking and investigation and retaining it. So they essentially get a rewind button on your life, going back several years, depending on how long they had the data. Where do those lines get formed in the jurisprudence that you're seeing emerge?
Well, remember that I think with this, I think the most important thing to recognize that is in this current Supreme Court, they're really actively narrowing the ability of the federal government, which always trickles down to the state and local governments, to use what they call John Doe warrants and these endless warrants in which you can apply. Remember, the Fourth Amendment says to particularly describe the persons and places to be the places to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. And so the courts are really, really focusing on that aspect of particularly describing. You recognize there is a legitimate use, and I'm trying to not sort of drown in the data of it, no pun intended, but the law behind these things is what is visible to the eye. So if you're driving around and you have a license plate on your car, you do not have an expectation of privacy for your license plate. And all of these things always turn back to an expectation of privacy. Your license plate data is stored in your tax collector's office, and it's stored for decades. There's no privacy in that at all. As a matter of fact, you have to go through extra lengths in order for privacy to be established. The same with your home ownership. Your home ownership is registered at your property appraiser's office, and anybody can go to the property appraiser's office and get decades of records in home ownership. And so what we have to decide as citizens of a society is, especially in this data age, and I would encourage people to go ahead and read the Supreme Court case of Carpenter v. U.S., because a lot of what Gorsuch talks about are these questions that are and will be coming up about data as we live in a greater data-driven society. And I would say as we become aware of these situations, communities need to come together and really define under their own terms where they want these things to begin and end, and start by creating ordinances at the county level to say, this is as far as we want our government to go. There's nothing wrong, and it's absolutely permissible for you to start creating resolutions and ordinances at the county level to protect the privacy rights of the people. But as far as jurisprudence goes, you really have to understand that privacy is, the laws on privacy are really dictated by an expectation of privacy. And you don't have an expectation of privacy on your license plate. As a matter of fact, the license plate laws actually preclude that. You have to have for example, you have to have an actual light on your license plate so it can be read, and you cannot have things covering your license plate so it can't be read. You can't even have mud all over your license plate so it can't be read. So license plates may be a little bit of a too specific of an issue, but you do not have an expectation of privacy there.
Thank you for that. I will open it up. We have Ms. Hall for probably about 10 more minutes. And so if we have 2 or 3 people who are interested in asking her a question, if you want to go there and press the button on the microphone. Oops. It's on? Okay, it's already on. Okay.
Hi, my name is Diane Hers. I had a follow-up question with regards to the license plate reader. You may not have an expectation of privacy to the license plate, right? But can the license plate reader be used as a way to track your movements? And is there any kind of right to privacy from the government keeping track of that information by using those readers?
Yeah, and that would then now invoke the precedent that's been established by Carpenter v. U.S. about tracking your movements, right? Even if you have, in Carpenter v. U.S., even if you have a warrant that allows you to have access to the data on the cell phone, you have to have a warrant that specifically says you're going to track this person. And so using a license plate reader to track someone's movement digitally will invoke new legal challenges in which Carpenter v. U.S. will be a precedent to require local governments to have warrants to use the readers in that way. And so it will be kind of, I can sort of envision the argument going like this because it's about an expectation of privacy, right? And those who would be in favor of using the readers to track someone's movement, they would simply say, well, what's any different about the police putting out a BOLO on a license or a lookout and having people watch around town for that license plate? That's not an invasion of an expectation of privacy because you don't have an expectation of that privacy for that license plate. So what's the difference between at the shift briefing, the lead supervisor saying, okay, everybody, check out this license plate, give us a radio call when you see it, we want to know what it's up to, and then using the electronic version of the reader to do that tracking. And so these are the kind of things that are going to really take, if we allow it to get to the point where we challenge it, it's going to take legal challenge and legal argument based on, precedent and specific circumstances to make a distinction in here if there is a distinction. But again, there's no reason why the county cannot issue some kind of resolution that says, as far as our county is concerned, our law enforcement will not be allowed to use license plate readers for tracking purposes, and if they do, the county believes there ought to be a per se ruling that it's inadmissible. And so these are the kind of directives that the county can give, especially over the police, which work for the cities anyway.
So I'm going to add a couple of things to that.
Is there anyone else? Yeah, so just go ahead and wait up here, and then Amy, if you want to get behind her, and then.
Okay, I'm going to try and be really specific here. We're talking about these automatic license plates reader. The vendor that we're talking about using here is Motorola, and Motorola has a LPR usage and privacy policy. And that explicit policy says that it collects all of the data collected in all of its cameras and it sells it to third parties, in particular other law enforcement agencies beyond other than Kootenai County or whoever is having it, and also to private corporations to use for marketing purposes and others. And the thing that really bothered me is it gives exact examples of what it's going to. It says, for example, it's going to sell this data to users of the system subject to U.S. Code 6801 to 6809. Well, that refers specifically to banks and insurance companies. Those are exactly the corporations that have massive data about you. So that we're reassured that all they're seeing is the numbers. They don't know who the people are behind it. Well, the banks and insurance companies know exactly they're the ones who can make sense of this
Right.
license plate. So they're basically saying, we're Motorola, we're going to take all the data and we're going to sell it to your insurance company and your banks to let them know where you are.
Did you have a question for KrisAnne?
Yes. So what can be done how is this legal? How is this not protected? I don't understand how we can have a federal government that allows this, but it looks like these laws actually just allow this type of abuse routinely.
Okay, so let's first make the distinction. You're talking about what's happening in your county and your state. So this is not something that is governed by federal law. This is something that ought to be managed at the state and local level. You're talking about principles of third-party vendors selling your data, but remember, and I know it feels offensive. I totally get that. It feels offensive. Selling your data, but this is not like your cell phone, right? This is not like your cell phone selling your data. This would be like if you were walking down the street, you're out in the public. You don't have a right, you don't have an expectation of privacy with your license plate. You do have an expectation of privacy to a certain degree, as, again, the Supreme Court noted in Carpenter v. U.S., regarding your travels and your location. The Supreme Court still has long-standing precedent of your right to travel freely without being encumbered. They said that free travel in the United States is actually a recognized liberty here. We don't have passports at our borders at our states, and the Supreme Court has said that would be illegal to have passports at the borders of our states. So the distinction, again, has to be made at the state and local level. And if this is something the community doesn't want to have at the local level, then the county has to be proactive about that and simply say, because our constituents do not want this level of surveillance, we do not want these devices in our county. We're not going to allow county funds in any way, shape, or form for any department, for any office to be used in this way. And we're not going to allow anyone in the county working for the county to accept state or federal funds for the funding of this. So it's going to have to take a proactive measure at the state and local level to stop these, or somebody's going to have to sue. It's a lot faster to do an ordinance than it is to sue. As I tell people all the time, because people always want to sue and think that litigation is really the answer, but the wheels of justice work very slowly. You'll start a lawsuit, especially about something like this, against a company like Motorola on an issue that has not been well decided in the courts. You're looking 2-3 years down the road before you see anything tangible. And then if you have to take it to the Supreme Court, it could be even longer than that. And so I always tell people the wheels of justice move very slowly. Their torque might be great, but it takes a long time to see things happen. And that's why you have to handle business through legislation. I mean, that's really the whole purpose, that every one of our states is required to be a constitutional republic, so that the representation of the people is reflected in these ordinances and these laws. And if you don't want these kinds of things in your county, then you have to be proactive to stop them. And you have to bring the education to the people. And I wonder how many people know how much of their data is already sold by third-party vendors. I mean, your license plate, yeah, but how many of you are on X? How many of you are on Instagram? How many of you are on Twitter or X? How many are on Facebook? How many of you use Google Maps on your phone? All of these things that we use every single day are third-party vendors that are selling off your data. That's why you can open up your phone after having a conversation with someone and be automatically prompted on one of your apps to buy something you were talking about, because your phone is listening to you and it's selling your conversations to, and these apps are using them to advertise to you through third-party vendors. And so we've really, really opened Pandora's box. If we want to close it, we're going to have to be a people that makes difficult choices and people who take control at the state and local levels, because it's not a federal issue. And if we want to be totally honest, these corporations are lobbying our state governments, making money that way.
All right. I want to be respectful of your time, Ms. Hall. Are you able to take another question?
I can take another question.
Hi. So I agree what you're saying. Like, being proactive is just so much better than reacting. So we have red light cameras here in Kootenai County that kind of just got put up, I feel, overnight without us knowing or allowing it. How do we backtrack since they're already up?
Well, that
is our way.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You can work through your county to take them down. Nothing is permanent in government. That is one rule, because every law can be repealed. Even our constitutions can be amended. So if you want to be proactive about that, you can be proactive and lobby your county to take the red light cameras down. That's something that can be done at the local level. Just like these readers, you can just simply say, no, we don't want them. And they're generally left to the discretion of the county in all cases. I mean, these are the things that require active and vigilant constituents. If you don't want these things to happen, then you have to educate your friends and families in the county as to why they need to oppose them, why it's a bad thing. Then you need to organize and activate those who don't want them to make a political, cultural change.
Thank you for that. Did you want to say one more thing? Okay.
One quick clarifying comment. I'm sure most of you probably know this. Motorola is owned by Google.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hall. I really appreciate you appearing with us tonight, and I look forward to your next visit to the Pacific Northwest. And I'll come and say hi. But it means a lot to me that you do this for us tonight. Thank you.
Well, did I help anybody out there? It's a little bit different than me being there, but I just want to make sure that we've answered everybody's questions and dealt with the issues there. I wish I had more definitive answers for you, but that's not really how the law works. And it really is a matter that we have to be involved. We have to make the change that we want to see.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I'm going to be respectful of your time. So have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
And I'll be in touch. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I hope that was a valuable information for you. Did you want to take some audience questions, or do you want to get into yours? Yes, which is fine. I just know that you have stuff to say too. So, okay. All right. So if you guys want to, I hate to say form a line, because I think several of you have some stuff to say, but Charity, you kind of popped up there first.
I can say it really loud. Does
Well,
the county even own any red light cameras, or isn't it cities and the
So
state?
the only problem is YouTube. You're not being recorded on YouTube, but I'll repeat it. So the county itself, Kootenai County government, does not. So it's City of Post Falls, City of Coeur d'Alene. Yeah, so the county itself does not.
The state does
ISP does not. ITD, I believe, does. We have not checked into them specifically. However, they still all have governing bodies as well. So it's not just the county. So anybody who'd like to speak, please come to the microphone. And we've got quite a bit of crowd here, so if we can keep it to about 3 minutes, that would be super helpful at this point. So, Oh, I'm sorry. County does not own red light cameras or license plate readers, the county itself. And we also don't do anything with roads. That's not in the purview of the county. So, all right, somebody making their way up to the microphone, please.
My name is Lori Daub, and I don't know if the 5G technology is included as a part of this conversation or not, but I know that we're fighting one by one against the towers, but the towers are up. Towers are everywhere. What do we need to do to put a halt to them and mitigate them?
Very short answer is we can look at some ordinances within the county. I know Dalton Gardens has an ordinance. I do not know that Dalton Gardens ordinance has gone through scrutiny, though, has, been challenged in the courts. So that part I wouldn't know, but, it's something that I wanted to look at. I did not feel like I had another commissioner who wanted to go down that path, so I have not pursued that at this point. But we have a couple court cases from cell towers that have been denied within the county, so we will find out those answers in the next few months or so. So with that, yep, come on up.
It's just a comment on your
comment. I'm sorry. Yeah, if you're up there.
I'm Zach Sifford. I'm a lieutenant with the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. And just to confirm with everybody in here, the county does not have any red light cameras. The cameras in the intersections are for ITD, and that's to count cars coming through intersections. It helps with crashes, and it helps with how to set anybody sat through a red light on 95 lately? Probably not, just me. It helps with that timing. So none of that is used for any enforcement action. So that would be false.
Thank you.
So yes, misspoke about the red light cameras. All I know is there's too many cameras around here. So question, Leslie, whatever cameras are anywhere in Kootenai County, that information, is it doing more than what this gentleman had just said? Like, is that data going anywhere? Do we need to be concerned about what Kris is saying?
So the agencies with the cameras, I'll just use Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene, yes, that data is shared with other law enforcement agencies. And at this point, I don't know that we have what their data policies are. I don't know that they have a data destruction policy. Well, that's not true. One of them has a 1 year and a 2 year, and they're going to go to a 1 year. So they're going to keep the data for 1 year. Yeah, I think that's the city of Coeur d'Alene. That's going to change that data policy. So, all right, any other things before we, yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment on the Dalton Garden ordinance. There's been no challenge to it, and it's nationwide, so it's pretty sound.
Okay, great. Thank you for that information. All right, any other things? I know that Mr. Cleary has some more information and some ideas here, so, okay.
Good evening. My name is Brian Cleary, and Leslie was kind enough to ask me if I could just think through the whole notion of license plate readers, and not in the sense of good or bad, but what makes sense. I think earlier you heard KrisAnne speaking about privacy and expectations of privacy and the way that the Supreme Court has evolved in their way that they look at it. But that expectation of privacy is informed by the community in which you live. That's us. The idea of using license plate readers is nothing new. We're familiar with it in other places, and it is an innovative technology, and how it is used makes a difference in whether it transcends a right of privacy or not. And that is something that I would have a few remarks on, but I will hark back to just childhood. I remember standing with the local police when I was a child, and just skateboarding, things like that, and talking with the cops in the car. And through those conversations, I poignantly remember this police officer saying, we'd ask him about, how fast is your car? What do you got in there? And 8-cylinder, how fast can that go? And he'd hold up his radio. I remember this one time, and he said, my motor might not be able to get you, but my Motorola will. Right? Technology evolves. It's not good or bad. It's benign. It's how you use it. And community and standards inform how it's used, and you folks help inform that through your local officials. As Kristen mentioned, this is not all federal top-down. They might provide the seed money for pilot programs for things like license plate readers, but that doesn't make the license plate reader evil. It is legitimate uses. We can inform how that is. And to cut to the chase here, because I'd like to ignite conversation around this, I have a few thoughts. Am I mumbling? Is that it? I was on a commission 2 years ago where I mumbled a lot. Nobody liked that. So I'll try to do better. How would we go about license plate readers being applied in the county? The sheriff desires them. Many of the infrastructure, the cameras, are already in the cars. They're just not reading. They don't have the software to read. They're just there. I don't know what they do. Maybe they have some function right now, but they're not doing the function of reading and giving feedback on the plates. And even if they did, what would they give back? Would they tell you who's operating the car? Possibly not. Probably not. The question gets a little trickier when it comes down to, of those plates that are being photographed instantaneously, is that information being held more than just in flash memory, such that there's a plate where there's a case that's been opened and it's in the system, and the plate number is associated with the case, and the plate reader just scans it, and it goes boop, and the police officer in the patrol car gets informed that that's a plate where there's a case opened on it, and maybe that rises to a level of suspicion that allows that officer to pull over. I won't get into the intricacies of where is it right or wrong to pull somebody over, but I'm trying to generalize and say it can work that way, and it's in flash data, but it's collecting every single plate, right, along the way. One question is, how long would that be retained? I don't know the answer. I don't know what is proposed. I've heard somewhere that, maybe 2 years is the appropriate time for retaining such data. I don't know what is intended when someone says that. I don't know what that means, but to me, it just sounds too long. That means let's say that was the case. Let's assume it might be the case, but let's not say that is going to be the case. Let's just hypothetically. If it was in a law enforcement system for 2 years, your plate, moving around the county. Now, maybe if there was one county police car that had that capability, and they were recording that, and this is all hypothetical, and they recorded it for 2 years, maybe that wouldn't really cause anybody much of a problem. But what if it was 40 cars, 80 cars, 100 cars? Would they be able to track that vehicle's movement throughout the county? I would suggest there's a good chance. Can it identify the individual sitting in the car who's driving it? Probably not. It's only capturing the plate data. So these are the kinds of things that come to mind, and without getting too far down the trail with it, where I want to come back to is, I think the public needs to understand how will that data be used. It has legitimate uses, but it also can be applied and cross the line, transcend liberties that we expect that we have. How do you do that? The sheriff has come forward, has asked for this software, the money for this software, so that they can activate the cameras for this purpose. I don't know how many, but they would like that. The budget was approved for this line item. That doesn't mean they have to commit the money, is my understanding. And the purpose of just kind of approving in the budget, but holding it and not applying it and releasing it yet, is to have this kind of a dialogue. I would suggest going a little bit further. The sheriff has rightly suggested that he's going to have public meetings and talk to the public about the policy that the department will adopt for the legitimate use of the cameras and solicit public input. I think that's a good idea. I think that's a good start. I would suggest going one step beyond that if it's not within his intentions, maybe it is. But I think one possible framework for people to consider would be the commissioners hold the purse strings. The sheriff is the one who is going to come up with the policy. Kristen said that the county would. Well, I think that the sheriff is the one that has it within their wheelhouse to come up with the policy about how you use this. But the county commissioners hold the purse strings that are the gateway through which he has to go to get the money to use them. So if we want to be assured that the policy is something that fits with public expectations, I would suggest this, that the commissioners tell the sheriff, we will consider releasing that money, but first we need to see the policy in writing. In developing that policy, yes, we agree with you that public engagement is good, but the commissioners want to appoint 3 citizen representatives, each from our representative realm from which we are elected. Those citizen representatives get to be with the sheriff and have input on the policy that he drafts. And they are your delegates, so to speak, from the public with eyes on as that draft policy is developed. They can give input, and at the end of that process, a recommendation is made to the commissioners on what the policy the sheriff has put together, whether those people from the citizenry think it's a good one, whether their input has been listened to. And then the commissioners get that draft policy and make a decision about whether they release the money in light of that policy. I would suggest some of the things to consider in that policy would be obvious things, not rocket science here. How is that data collected and for what purpose? How long is it retained? There should be an ongoing citizen oversight, like an audit of the system, but citizen oversight throughout that process. So yearly, an audit report is developed, perhaps more frequently, but there is an ongoing citizen presence and oversight that understands what that audit is and interacts. Other things that should be considered in the policy should be, of the data that is collected and stored, where is it stored? Is it Motorola through Vigilant Systems, which is really Vigilance, the one that came up with the technology, Motorola bottom, and I wasn't aware of the Google factor, but thank you. Where's that data going? Up into the sky, and how is it going to be accessed? Appropriately, the sheriff says only law enforcement with a legitimate purpose can have access to it. What does that mean? You want to see it in the policy. And is it just simply like any law enforcement agency could come in and say, I have a warrant, give me the data? Is that good enough? Or does it comport with our local standards for the use of that data, such that if an outside agency came to access our data and said, we want that access, does it comport with our policy? Do they have similar policies about retention, use, things like that, such that it's compatible and we feel comfortable that our data that's being collected here is being used in appropriate ways consistent with our community standards? These are just thoughts. They're nothing definitive. I'm just trying to think out loud with you. And I have the mic, so I'm hogging it a bit. I apologize. But I've been thinking about this for weeks, just trying to put some thoughts around it. I wanted to really have a great outline, but I find that I can't. There's just too much in this, and it's such a hot wire issue that people's blood pressure gets way up, and it's partly because we don't understand the technology, and so we fear it. Technology is benign. It's how we use it, It's how we use that technology, and we are the source of how it should be used here. And I think the framework that maintains the silos of government here, where the sheriff has the responsibility for developing the policy, that is true. But in this silo, the commissioners have the control over the budget.
Okay, hang on.
Hold
Little
on to
rules
that.
of play. Anybody who has not spoken, I would invite you to come up first. Correct. And I want to make a couple, yes.
And their policy is to sell.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
So, in light of that,
Yeah,
I think that's stimulated a lot of people to want to have comments. So let me just pause there. They're just thoughts. They're not definitive.
Right.
And I want to be respectful of everyone's input.
Yes, and I want to make a couple clarifications. The license plate readers that exist within Kootenai County, not owned by us, but other cities, they're stationary. They do have one that can be moved around, but typically they're stationary. The ones that the sheriff wants are in the cars. So to my knowledge, there are not wide use of in-car license plate readers in any law enforcement within Kootenai County. I think Coeur d'Alene might have one that they're testing, but in general, that's where we're at. The other thing too is that, the Motorola policy talks about selling the data. However, Kootenai County would own that data, and it would come to Kootenai County's policy how long that we would have Motorola store that data for us, and they would not sell it. They are not permitted to sell Kootenai County's purchased data. So that is what was told to me by the Motorola rep in person, and that's what they said. So anyway, I'm just telling you what I was told, so I can only go by that. But yes, ma'am, please.
Hi, Alyssa DeSantic. I've been in this room many times talking about the towers, particularly the one that we're still battling up on Potlatch Hill. I just wanted to make a comment on your technology comment. These technologies are connected. Okay, they don't work in a vacuum. And knowing that, and knowing the fact that the 5G towers in particular, and smart meters, are Department of Defense military-grade weapons that they have installed across our country and around the world without asking anybody, and without helping us understand the effects and putting legislation in place more than 20 years ago that will prohibit any of us from making wise decisions about that technology before it's upon us. I think it's a naive perspective to have. I know we're just mainly talking about the license plate readers here, and that is maybe its own category. Okay, well, everything is a very big, broad topic, and I would love to have an opportunity, and I'm sure a lot of other people here too would love to have more discussions about this. Thank you for doing this evening. I just wanted to point out the fact that it doesn't end with one piece of technology. They are all connected. We're all living in the world of not just the Internet of Things anymore, but the Internet of Bodies. Okay, we have technology inside of us now that we didn't necessarily put there, but it's there. And so all of these things working together in conjunction with each other, plus the AI, plus the overlords like Google, et cetera. We're looking at a much bigger picture here, and I think that steps maybe need to be considered that take all of those things into the sort of collective battle that we're in, and not just discount one because it is focused on a license plate. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Scott Schofield, Post Falls resident. So we attended, I think it was the budget meeting when this kind of came up, and so I met with Sheriff Norris at the end, and I asked, first because I didn't know what equipment he had, and he said it was Motorola. I said, oh, well, in preparation to come here, I kind of did a quick Google search to see what the top 5 most hacked license plate readers were, and I don't remember which one it was now, but Motorola was like in the top 3. So that's a big concern. To your question is, where's the data being stored, and how do you protect that data from it being hacked? So I guess the question would be, are there, flash readers like license, that it's just there, quick access, and then gone, and that it's not stored? Those are type of things that we should, be looking at as well, because that's a big concern of storing our data and it being able to be penetrated. Because, so I asked him, I said, well, why don't you switch to a whole different brand? He goes, well, we have a bunch already that are Motorola. So he was kind of resistant to making a change on that. But obviously I don't want those at all, but you need to look at some other options. It's not just stay with what we have, because Motorola is one of the worst for data hacking.
Thank you. All right, Mayor?
Kurt Jernigan, I want to address a little bit about my thoughts on license plate readers. I do agree that technology can be benign, but when you have technology that is so pervasive and you do any reading on smart cities, you can easily understand that it's all about power and control. And as far as the license plate readers, I'm in favor of supporting our law enforcement and providing the tools that they need. But we're talking data retention, we're talking data collection. Where does it live? How long does it live there? And can we really trust an entity that is really profit-driven and motivated to use our data about our personal lives? I have a real problem with that.
Thank you.
So I'm coming here from a parent conference, so I'm a little bit blind coming in here. I just walked in. I just want to say that I'm totally against the cameras. I agree with that young lady, the slender one, that said about military grade 5G. I second that. And if anyone wants to challenge that, we can talk in the back and I'll inform you of it. Second of all, we already have 4, 6, or 8 cameras at intersections. Now, I noticed ever since I opened up my big informative mouth, I've noticed some of them have come down, but replaced with 360 cameras. And the thing about these car cameras is that, why do you need to hold it? I'm not pointing at anybody, I'm just talking. Why do you need to hold it for 2 years? When I did work the unit, we called it in. You ran the plate, you did a 2829 on it, once and warrants. That's the end of it. What do you need it for 2 years? What they do is they sell it, or they want to use it for something else. You don't need to track me. You don't need to track any of these people, okay? You need to start taking these cameras down. 5 years ago, the sheriff should have done a security assessment on critical infrastructure. There's no cameras on the power station between Hayden and Coeur d'Alene. If you have 9 stations shut down out of 55,000, the whole system shuts down. It's dark, there's no cameras, there's no patrols at Hayden. I've said this a number of times, and I'm going to say it. So if there's any bad guys out there, be prepared, we're all going to watch you. But Sheriff, you're on the spot. 5 years, you haven't done it. Why did you buy the cars in another state? You didn't give the business here. Why did you put cameras in without asking the community? You should have bought some cameras to put them in the power station, because if I'm almost done. The power station goes down, you have no power, you have no water, because you have to have electricity to do it, you have no sewage, and you have no medical devices. So how many live in Hayden here? Okay, so you're out of luck if that thing gets shut down. How many is in Coeur d'Alene? You're out of luck too, okay? So we don't need that. I'm more than willing to volunteer until this country gets settled, and it'll get settled in the next couple of months. I'm willing to give some time. We got 23,000 vets. I can encourage each one of them to give 4 hours one time, okay? And I'll give 4 hours once a week. I got a son I need to take care of. That's a long story. I'm a single dad, okay? But this is ridiculous. I'm not for this AI. It's nothing but control. I worked at high levels inside the military. I know exactly how the government operates. It's control, control, control. And there's no reason to keep it for 2 years. You don't need to. They don't even have a clue how to secure this information coming in.
Jim.
And it shouldn't be kept that long. Get on the radio, call in at 2829, wants and warrants. That's it. It's the end of the story. And they need to start taking these cameras down. And one last thing, and I'm done. How in the world that the sheriff did not know in the last 4 years, and his crew, that these cameras are going up in the middle of the night. You never seen it? Don't you have any powers of observation? You don't see these cameras going up? I would think that somebody in 4 years would say, hey, what are you doing up there, pal? Okay, why are you doing this? And I heard through the sheriff's department, I'm not going to say who, told me that they only operate the camera at Honeysuckle and 95. So who's watching us? Okay,
Thank
it
you.
ain't the traffic department.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, I am Bill Breezy, and I'd like to bring up something that hasn't really been discussed about this. Cameras are cameras, but I'm worried about the software. The software is what controls the cameras. How many of you get up in the morning and you turn your cell phone on and you say, your phone's been updated? We don't know what they updated. So how is the county going to address that? You know, Motorola is going to be updating their software and updating it and updating it. How do you know what the updates are? The updates might include, you know, the selling and the this and the that, but that's what I'm concerned about, you know, because you have no control over that.
Right. Thank you.
Well, good evening. My name is Bob Grossglauser, and I love the passion I hear in this room. I'm just going to speak from personal experience. I had my identity stolen in 2017, and it was HE double hockey sticks. People were buying cars. I had to change my license, change so many things. And I come to realize that cyber theft is the biggest crime in the world. If it were a country, it'd be the third largest country behind the United States and China. We can't stop it. They can't even prosecute it. So my attitude is until we can control and protect the data, don't collect any more, especially from innocent people. That's my stance.
Thank you.
So before 2020, we did things on a handshake. That's what we did. Listen to the sales rep. I trusted him. We're not doing this anymore. That is why we're all here. I am so grateful to Teresa because she just dives deep in all that researching. We need to do things differently. It's not about being against the police department or the sheriff's department. It's not about them wanting to be safe. Talk about brainstorming. We need to brainstorm how do we solve their issues without infringing on our rights? Because we are saying no. Going back to what Bill was saying with the cell phones, we are so screwed. Every time my cell phone doesn't want to work and I have to do that update because I'm now conditioned to using it, he's exactly right. We don't know what we're agreeing to. So the issue isn't about the sheriff and his policies. Like, I think it's great, Brian, you want to create these wonderful community policies. It's wonderful in theory, but in reality, because of those software companies, we don't have that luxury. They don't give a damn about our policies. They're going to do what they're going to do. And like Kris said, we are opening up Pandora's box, and it's much harder to shut it once it's opened up.
Yeah, I know a comment was made about the data that's being collected not being used for personally identifiable information. But just a couple examples. A couple years ago, Google promised that it wasn't tracking people's location if your location services were turned off. They were busted red-handed. They tracked every single person. So years before that, Alexa. Oh, we're only tracking information if you say, hey, Alexa, we don't hear anything else. Remember what happened in Arkansas? There was a murder that took place in a house with Alexa, and do you know who got subpoenaed? We know who got subpoenaed. Amazon, because that whole stinking conversation was recorded. They're recording everything. And so if the comment is that, oh, the government has this data, but it's not doing anything with it, raise your hand. Given what we know about the government in the last 5 years, raise your hand if you trust our government not to abuse any data that it has.
Hi, I'm Grammy. My question goes back to whenever my history of ICU critical care nurse for 46 years in charge of policies and procedures. Whenever there's something that goes sideways, you have to evaluate first who wrote the policy, who benefits, does it apply appropriately to what it is saying? and who benefits. And then I go back further with the who benefits. I go back further to who approved it. And if the budget was approved, did anybody have a question and table the approval of the budget long enough to get these answers? But no, the budget's already approved, so now we have to dig and backtrack and try to turn the page back in the book that was openly passed on and approved, stance of approval. It's a whole lot easier to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission. And now we're in the process of questioning the forgiveness because permission was given. Questions needed to be answered. And so the policy is carte blanche, paid for. And now that you hold the purse, you still hold the purse, but there's still approval. And the concern that I have is what guarantees do we have tonight that you will not in any way release the funding for something that is so highly controversial and that people are passionate enough to speak up about? Because the person who created the policy, or not necessarily the policy, but they have to have a policy in place in order to ask for your money. They do. They have something. They might not have given it to you, but I guarantee you before I could ever give anything to my board of directors, they wanted to see, okay, you want $20,000. Tell us what you're going to use it for. Oh, that sounds good. Well, when the fox is telling the rooster how he wants things done in the hen house, it might sound good, and then the farmer pays for it because it was given a stamp of approval, and before you know it, it's a bunch of chicken feathers laying around. So I guess what I'm saying is hindsight is 20/20, but let's put stronger glasses on. Let's look at the policy that's there, and don't give anybody, I'm not trying to be partisan to one or the other. I'm focused on the policy. We don't know what it is. So you gave the okay on the financial backing without really knowing what you were backing. That concerns me greatly.
So let me just clarify that. I didn't support them, and I've been challenging them all along. And budget approval does not give spending authority. They do not have permission to get this. The Sheriff's Department has to bring us a contract, and the board, 2 of the 3 of the board have to sign it. And again, I was promised policy, that I would see policy. I kind of like Mr. Cleary's idea about having some citizen involvement in developing those. Okay, excellent.
And I appreciate what you're saying because you're the reason I'm here. If there was anybody else sitting in that seat, I don't know that I would come because it would be a done deal.
Thank you. Thank you. But no, I understand the concern, but I also could not hold up the budget process because we had to have a budget passed. And so I knew that my co-commissioner would not pass it unless the employees got a 3.5% to 4% pay raise, and that's not something that we could do across the board. So I had to approve the budget. Even though this is in there, it's not spending authority. We can say no to any contract that's brought before us. So it's not a done deal, and I absolutely would not sign anything without seeing the policy. So just clarification.
Thank you. I just want to bring up an analogy. KrisAnne was talking about TSA. And TSA's been around since about 2001, 2002. At that period of time, I was traveling overseas a lot. I was teaching English and foreign languages, and I was in China when 9/11 happened. And when I left in 1999 to go to China, I left America. I left the United States of America in 1999. I came back in 2002 to cameras everywhere. I felt like I was back in China. I was shocked. I was revolted. I was disgusted. It's been since that time. And it's something we need to really make a decision about. Are we going to tolerate this to continue? What TSA does, every time I go to the airport, I am so furious because I lost my freedom because of the bad guys. The bad guys won. These license plate readers sound the same. It sounds like we're all going to lose our freedoms again just because of some bad guy that needs to be caught. Are we willing? Is that what we really want? And moreover, Why are there these camera groupings that look like they also have microphones on them on I-90? Out by, well, it's exactly right above, it's where the construction is now at Highway 41. But prior to that, there was this huge grouping of cameras with what looks like microphones in them, and they're dotted along I-90 as well. What are they and why are they there? Okay, so we really do need to start making some decisions and be firm and strong about what we believe. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy Fonstrom. I have a couple questions. They mentioned federal grants. Do you know if the license plate readers that are on the, I believe it's 36 Sheriff's Department vehicles were paid for by any federal money?
They were not.
So they were paid for out of county money?
Yes.
Do we know when those were approved or the finances were approved for that?
Embarrassingly enough, they said we need new cameras for the cars, and that's what was bought. I had no idea that they had this capability, and so kind of here we are.
So, and also, so the budget was approved, and I know at the time we had asked if there was a contract with Motorola that you could see ahead of time or any policy, and so it was basically approved with no knowledge of policies or contracts, right?
So again, how it usually works with the county is a department will say, I would like this tool. And they are supposed to get a quote for the tool so they can bring it forward in the budget. Again, that is not spending authority, especially if it involves a contract. The contract has to come before us. So what we will say for non-controversial things especially, the solid waste needs a new bulldozer, right? We're going to approve that. Then they're going to come back before us to say, here's our purchase order for the bulldozer, and we have to sign off on that. So we have an internal county policy that says anything over $10,000 has to come back before the board. We just did it today where our elections came with a $10,200 bill that we had to approve. They had budget authority, it's approved in their budget. We knew they were going to spend it. They have to run an election. So then they come back before us to get that approved. Same thing with this. This is a contract. So even though they brought it forward and said, hey, this is what we want, this is how much it's going to cost, they have to bring the contract back before us for approval. So that's where, again, during the budget talks, I said I want to see, the policy that deals with this. So that's kind of where we're at for this. And for all major purchases over $10,000 are requiring contracts.
So quickly, so I know that all the vehicles were taken down to Arizona to have the license plates installed, the license plate readers installed. I don't know if everyone knows that. Now, when they did it, I know, so was it approved in $10,000 increments? So they were taken down, put on, and then brought back?
So they're just cameras at this point. They're just cameras. So
well,
yeah,
except they're not because they already had software going as a trial.
Correct, which I had no
Yeah.
knowledge of that either. However, typically they come before us, like we've got 10 patrol cars that have already been ordered for the 25 budget essentially. And so they bring back the purchase orders of the cars, they bring back the purchase orders of the equipment. They call it outfitting. And I want to say it's Utah, not Arizona.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah.
but they have an outfitter that they work well with, that they go to get all the lights and the equipment on the typical cars that we get from Ford.
Do we have access to that budget, what was spent on those license plate readers?
Absolutely, yeah. Just make a public records request for the cameras and for, the vehicles themselves or the
It would cost
outfitting.
money to take them down there and everything, correct? Like all of that would cost, right? Not just going down to have the cameras. They would have to transport all of the vehicles down and bring them back. So,
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just want to, make public record that I am against them, and I just want our voices to be heard. And I hope we can all share this information so that we can get the rest of our community involved to stand up and not allow this to happen. Because as she said, it's us. The commissioners represent us, and we need to make a stand against it. So,
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
Charity Joy with the Kootenai Journal for the record. I have some clarifying questions, Commissioner Duncan. Was the pilot program approved in May of 2019 with a vote of 2-1, you and Commissioner Felios voting to approve the pilot program for the license plate readers?
I have no idea. I'd have to go back. I know that we had the Stone Garden grant at that point, which apparently that was a license plate reader camera on one vehicle that didn't get much use.
Okay. And that was approved then without asking for a policy or seeing a contract for the data retention?
We saw what the, not the contract, but what the grant was at that point.
So the pilot program was started with a grant?
I believe so.
Federal, state?
I think it's a federal grant. About 2 months or 3 months after I took office.
At any point in the last 5 years, has the Commissioner's Office requested a review or an audit of the program?
Not to my knowledge.
Does the county at the Commissioner level have any programs or policies policies or procedures in place that audit new programs for anything, law enforcement or any other department?
Not that not that I can think of.
Very good, thank you.
Am I on trial? Okay.
Maureen Marion, thank you for having this. This has been very informative. A couple things. One lady, I'm kind of piggybacking on what she said about the policy, and because what I wrote down is, you know, are we going to be responsible or are we going to live in fear? And you can see what happened in 2020, okay? A lot of people lived in fear. And so what I see in the future is, oh, we need this for the bad guys. And I don't, you know, there are increasing violence in even in our county. So that's going to get played on people's, you know, oh, my kids, this, that. And that's, to me, that's going to be huge because I wanted personal responsibility in 2020 and I want personal responsibility. I'm not going to live in fear. Also, going back 1 year, 2 years, I think a lot of us know what's happening in the UK. They're going back 1 or 2 years, social data, and they are arresting people. So when people that don't know that much about this and they're going to mock us or they're going to mock the policy, what does it matter? It's like, well, 1 or 2 years, we don't know who's going to be a commissioner. We don't know what's going to get voted in. And if these things aren't rock solid, we're sunk. I don't know. I don't like to increase government, but somehow we need a data freedom policy, I think, for Kootenai County. Thank you.
Leslie Cole. Hi, Leslie. I'm really thankful that you called everyone together for this topic. I, for one, have learned a lot. And I thought it might be appropriate to ask at this point, since you're asking for feedback. At this point, is there anyone in this room that is in favor of more of this surveillance? So that's some feedback for you. Thank you very much for asking us to come.
Thank you.
I'm Sherry Schofield, Post Falls. Thank you, Leslie. And I was at the budget meeting. So for any of you that weren't at the budget meeting, you should probably know that one of our commissioners, Matari, has a license plate cover over his license plate so he won't get screened or scanned or anything, our commissioner. So vote Matari out.
Hello, I'm Lachlan Cleary. I just have a quick question. Do we know how many cars are currently planned to have these scanners installed on?
Right. So the contract is for 28 cars, but a lot from where I sit, and I've not verified this, but it could be up to 50 cars have these types of cameras in them. but right now they're only asking for 28 cars to have that capability.
Good evening, Ms. Duncan. This is going to be fun. RJ Garwood from Kootenai County, and I am a Motorola employee. And I've been asked to come here to talk to you guys. I'm brave.
Please, yeah, let's be respectful, please.
Remember, I'm a county resident as well, so this is a vested interest in me. So I've met with Ms. Duncan, I've met with Mr. Matari, I met with Senator Hart, and we've talked about LPR, pros and cons. I have a list of items that I've taken some notes from that I could probably address if we have the time. Do you have anything specific for me that you want to ask, or you just want me to run down this list and kind of address them? And I'm open for questions too, so.
Yeah, I think that's fine with me. I did get all my questions answered with you before, and again, it goes down to policy, retention of data, and that kind of stuff.
Correct. A couple things. As policy goes, the policy is up to the Sheriff's Department. We have hundreds of agencies throughout the United States that have LPR cameras and policies. Motorola bought Vigilant a few years ago. Prior to that, it was owned by 3M and a couple other people. It changed hands. We bought the technology. I've been Motorola for about a year and a half. I retired after 27 years as a police officer in a very active department, and I used the technology when I was a police officer. So with that being said, I have intimate knowledge of how it works. I also have an intimate knowledge of how it can be abused. I also have an intimate knowledge of how effective it can be. So, and I'm a salesperson, I'm a manager. Kootenai County buys their equipment from a third-party vendor, so I support them. I answer questions, technical questions. I don't write policy. I'm not a police officer any longer, so I don't have access to any LPR information, but I'm going to clear up a couple of things. One of the things that Vigilant has two different platforms, and the policy that you guys have in front of you is a commercial data platform. There's two different versions. There's commercial data and there's law enforcement data. Commercial data is correct. The lady that brought it up is repossession vehicles, insurance companies buy cameras. They have a commercial application. They're only entitled to what is in that platform. For example, if a bank puts in a repo note for a vehicle, and they have cameras in vehicles that'll drive around alleys, parking lots, different places, scans the vehicle, it reads the plate. All it does is pull up a repo ticket. It doesn't identify the owner, doesn't identify the driver, it doesn't do any of that. It says that vehicle is absconded from a civil agreement, give me my car back for the bank. It'll be repoed. The insurance companies use it for verification of address and keep people paying their insurance for their right zip code, those different things. That's it. They buy that technology, they get that information from the banks, that's how it works. Law enforcement has a different set of criteria. It is based on privacy, it is based on all of our rights that we have in place, and one of the things that law enforcement can do to further investigations, they can subscribe to that commercial data. It's a one-way street, doesn't go both ways. So the repossession companies, perfect example, if Kootenai County wants to buy that commercially obtained data, it costs thousands of dollars. They don't subscribe to it, but it can further investigations for vehicles related to crimes, missing persons, wanted persons related to vehicles, stolen vehicles, amber alerts, silver alerts, blue alerts, like I'm getting older, I need a silver alert, right? We go missing. You would be amazed how many people we have in Kootenai County that drive away with dementia and Alzheimer's, and we find their plates, they've gone through a certain spot. We can start looking for them from that point forward for the amber alert side, or the silver alerts. Amber alert we just had today. In New Mexico, they caught kidnappers of 5 children at a rest stop at a Love's with an LPR camera. They were taken from Texas. That's why we do LPR cameras. Nobody cares about us driving around, where you're going. One of the things that we do with the way the cameras are set up, and if you've seen the cameras on the highways, the cameras that are LPR cameras you won't see because they get your rear plate. We're not taking pictures of front of drivers. The cameras can't take pictures accurately of people. They are designed for a plate. It recognizes alphanumeric characters, which triggers the camera to take the picture. And what it does is it takes a backup picture of that vehicle, so you get a back of the vehicle and that plate. It helps distinguish between a false hit on a vehicle. One of the things that it does is if a stolen vehicle is entered into NCIC, which is the statewide database system, it will recognize that plate. It'll pop as an alert. If it's a fixed camera, it can go to dispatch, and Post Falls has it, Kootenai County has it, Coeur d'Alene has it. Idaho State Police does not own any equipment, but they can monitor, they pay for subscription to the data, law enforcement data. So they currently don't own any equipment. So the idea is the mobile systems that we're talking about, and that's what was brought up, the camera systems that the county bought are extremely advanced. And it's designed for in-car cameras paired with the body cameras that the deputies wear, and it also can be paired with their radios for emergency activations and different things. One of the emerging technologies is that camera is good enough, it can read plates. They did not buy the cameras with the intention of having license plate readers. As a matter of fact, when they signed that contract with the vendor, we didn't have that technology. It evolved with that camera. So hence the...
Software update, that's what we're saying, software update.
Right, okay. Software update. So they were able to test it to see if it was effective and if it was worth the money. That's where it landed, and that's why we're here, because they asked for the money to pay for those, the license subscription to those cameras, because it costs money for data. So that's why we're here. So they did not buy them with the intention of LPR cameras. That was not their purpose. Their purpose was in-car camera systems, body-worn camera systems, paired with their portable and mobile radios in the vehicles and on the deputies, as well as the CAD system that the county uses. So it all works together, but yeah, to your point, you're correct. It is an update, and it's technology. And yeah, but that's, again, a county policy, and quite honestly, I don't like facial recognition or comparison
Okay,
manager.
hang on,
okay.
we'll get questions,
So-
we'll get to questions in a minute.
Okay, so we got that. I just want to touch on some of these things. So we talked about the in-car camera system. Someone mentioned IT updates. I think that was you, update maybe. The update has to be done on those in-car camera systems by Kootenai County IT. So they know what's going in, what's being updated, that kind of stuff. So that's done physically. They have to plug in an Ethernet cable and update it. So that's there. It's just not done wirelessly. What's that? They're county employees, as far as I know. So the county has 2 IT people, and they handle all IT.
We have a lot of IT people.
Yeah, well,
But
the
yes,
two that I-
2 assigned
Yes,
to
2 that I
that
know of.
particular unit.
And they're good guys. Great.
Okay, guys, let's,
What if they don't update it? That's the question. Like, what if they don't, what if the IT people don't update it? Like, what if they it's our policy not to update, then what? Are they allowed not to update it? No.
well, it depends on what the update is. I think
Right.
you'd have to dig into it and find out what the update is.
I think if it was a firmware update for the camera system to work, then it would be appropriate. It's not really updating LPR technology. It is what it is at that point. So it's, and again, it's an off or on. You don't get the best of both. You can't do it kind of off, kind of on. You have to subscribe to it based on our policy. Oh, sure. Yeah, just like everything. The data, there is transparency. I've talked with the sheriff's department, with the undersheriff, with the sheriff, with captains, and our audit system that Vigilant has in place, the county sheriff's department can audit down to the keystroke. It's very advanced, and it's designed to be CJIS compliant, so it's all identified. It's designed to pick up any excessive uses. For example, I have a password, and all of a sudden I have 5 logons in 10 minutes. Well, I probably gave my password out. So now the county can be aware of that. There's markers that can say, hey, we've had unauthorized accesses or multiple accesses of the same person. Usually it's one vehicle. So there's a lot of things that they can get into to make sure that there isn't an abuse, and that's the way the policy be written. That's the county policy. So there's transparency, there's auditing, and like I said, down to a very, very granular level. On the county side, which is a great idea, having an oversight committee and having an audit per the county's policy with the Board of County Commissioners. Let's see. Traffic cameras versus LPR. Yes, it has been brought up. There are a lot of traffic cameras in town. I see them too. Trust me, I see them. I'm like, what the heck? Same thing down in Boise, ton of traffic cameras. I had a big learning lesson here that each county has their own highway district, and they manage the highway districts independently. So I asked the Ada County deputy, why are there so many cameras in this intersection? Because those are all not monitored live feed cameras. I'm like, for what? I have the same questions you guys do. So I'm like, why would you have live feed cameras? Well, if there's an accident or an event, we can go to the EOC and watch it live. It's not recorded. I'm like, well, it doesn't, then why have them? So, and there's push to zoom cameras, different things. Those are not the LPR cameras. LPR cameras are very small, very fixed. There's some old technology here. The technology here in Post Falls, Kootenai County, and Coeur d'Alene, they've been here for about 14 years. Cameras have been here for 14 years. I know the guy that installed them that long ago. So they've been here for a long time. Post Falls looks at expanding it as they're expanding out into the prairie. So there's a bunch of them. And up and down I-90 as well. Let's see. Plate covers. I know everybody they have plate covers. Unfortunately, the cameras can see through the plate covers. Sorry. They can read it unless you spray paint it black. Then it's not going to read it. But then you're not going to be able to see them by the deputies either, so that's going to be another problem. And just for the record, there is a vehicle code section that says you can't cover the plates, so it's another reason for a stop, and nobody likes to be stopped. Because there is nothing allowed to be covering a license plate. It's in the vehicle code section. The cameras can read it, but you and I might not be able to read it with our naked eye. So, right, so if it's a tinted cover, you can't really make it out, but the cameras are able to shoot through it. So it's an IR camera. So I think I covered most of my topics.
Okay.
But I think that policy was the difference is commercial versus the law enforcement version.
Correct.
So did you have any questions for me?
I don't. Like
I don't want to
said,
open up to these guys. They're going to kill me.
Right. No. Okay, so, all
Is
right,
that a question?
Jim, yeah, so Jim, I don't want this to get out of hand. So RJ, if you are willing to answer questions, I will keep it as civil.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so please just raise your hand and have RJ call on you, Mr. Garwood, so go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
So what legalities does Motorola have with all the hacking that's going on, including the own companies hacking their companies for the data to sell? What legalities does Motorola have if they're hacked?
And if you can repeat the question, please.
The question was legalities with being hacked and the data. Pretty much sums it up. Well, I'll tell you this. Our Vigilant software has not been hacked. I don't know where that information came from before. A gentleman found out that we were the third most hacked. There's only about 4 LPR camera companies out there. Well, I can't promise anything. However, I will tell you this. Post Falls Police Department was hacked twice. Ransomware one time. They did not get to the Vigilant Learn system. Anything can be hacked, right? Just like your cell phone, just like your oven, whatever you want. But I can't guarantee anything, but I will tell you this. It is a government Azure server, cloud server, that is protected by Motorola and Microsoft.
It is Microsoft, so that is not secure.
It hasn't been hacked yet, so let me.
Okay, folks, I'm sorry. We're not going to have a debate or argument. I just want him to be able to answer questions.
And one of the other things that, and I'll touch on it, is it doesn't, our LPR system does not track personal data. For example, is it Jim in the back? Yes? That your name is Jim? Yeah. He brought up earlier 28 and 29. That's a code for running a license plate. As a patrol officer, I can roll up and type in your plate into my KDT, and I can say, I know who you are, where you live, when your vehicle's expired, if you've been stopped recently, all that can come up in that records request without a reason. No expectation of privacy, run your plate, tell me who's the owner. Doesn't tell me that it's you driving it. Doesn't give me a picture of you or anything. On the LPR system, all it does is capture the plate. It doesn't identify the driver. And the way the system works that the county is looking at is if a deputy pulls up to an intersection, it's going to grab the plates that are near it. For this front camera, it's a very small camera. If there's a wanted felon vehicle, stolen vehicle, missing person, it'll pop up an alert to that plate, and it's associated to something else. It is on the deputy to look into that further. Why is this plate hitting on this hit? It's a missing person. Fabulous. We're going to make a car stop because I have justification to make that car stop. And that would only be a hit. It doesn't tell the deputy anything about the vehicles around it. It just records it and moves on. And it comes down to the policy on the retention. And the retention could be 7 days up to indefinite. Most of the agencies that I work with have about a year policy, which makes sense, right? Mostly for criminal investigations. So, yes, ma'am.
Privacy policy, it refers only to customers, and there's no distinction whatsoever between law enforcement customers and commercial customers. In fact, it explicitly says all customers. So I have not seen anything resembling a data usage and privacy policy that is unique to law enforcement, and there's nothing in this that excludes law enforcement from this policy, which does allow Motorola to retain all the data from all of its phones.
Did you guys all hear that question?
Yeah, but for YouTube, you kind of have to repeat it. So essentially, it just sounded like about the data retention on the Motorola side.
Yes, the question was, there's a commercial data and a law enforcement data. The contract that she's holding up recommends all customers, and it doesn't discern between commercial and law enforcement. So yes, you are correct. That is a commercial data, commercial customer contract. The law enforcement can purchase the rights to that information and access it via the database. Correct. We own the data. And for example, if you are a repossession company, you own a repossession company, and I'm answering your question. You tell me, as Motorola, how long you want that data retained. And you set your policy, and it purges that data at that time. We don't keep it indefinitely.
Okay, he just answered the question. So.
Correct. And I've answered the question to the fact that the data is purged at that company's policy, or in our case, Kootenai County's policy. We don't control the data, we store it. You as a customer, Kootenai County as a customer, would control the purging of that data and the retention.
Okay, well, ma'am, you've already had a chance to speak. I need some other people to get some questions.
So what protection would there be if the federal government came to Motorola and wanted to grab the data just like they did when they went to Bank of America and wanted all the private information on all who attended January 6th? How do you keep Motorola from turning that over to the federal government?
We got a ton of attorneys. If it is based on, hang on.
Hey, guys, we're supposed to be respectful. Please just let him answer the question.
For example, it's a legit question, and let me give you the answer that I know of, right? The data that they would be asking for would have to be very specific. So they would say, I want Kootenai County's data, or I need data on this from this agency. They don't have access to it because, back to the lady's question in the back, we don't own the data. We store it, and it's purged however the agency customer sees fit. So with that being said, it's up to that agency on how they want to share it. We don't share it. We own the storage where the data is stored. We own that. So when you get LPR cameras, you send the data to us, so we're part of the storage instead of you spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to store all that license plate data. We store it as part of the deal. You tell us, and it's set up in your program, it purges at a year. So if that plate is pulled a year ago today, tomorrow it's purged from the system. So it's up to you on how the customer determines that data is stored and disposed of. Yes, sir.
So if one of these cars rolls up to an intersection and that camera is hitting on 6 or 7 license plates, which has data associated with it, and none of them are like criminals. Is there any place that gives somebody permission for them to identify name, address, phone number, all somebody goes with a license plate number, and then store that somewhere? Or is it just automatic that because you're a citizen, you're subject to getting scanned?
So the question is if the data is stored and if the data is license plate, name, phone number, address, et cetera, on a vehicle that's scanned at an intersection, correct?
So that I'm just assuming that the camera sees that and has all the information available to it.
It does not. What it does scan is the plate, and that there's a want or a hit associated with that plate. And again, back to any felony, entered plate, missing person, so on, it hits a criteria, then it'll give a response back to that deputy in that vehicle and say, that vehicle right there is a missing person. But it doesn't say, I'm sorry, what's your name, sir?
Bill.
It doesn't say, that's Bill in Bill's car at that intersection. It doesn't tell anybody that.
So it rolls up to the intersection and it sees a bunch of plates.
Correct.
None of them are criminally related.
Right.
Or missing persons or deputy safety. So nothing happens to that scan at all. It doesn't even pick up on it.
It just goes to a database that vehicle was there at that intersection at that time. And if it's ever pulled again, let's say it's you, Bill, no offense, but you go missing. You don't check in with your wife and you've been gone for 2 days. And they put you in as a missing person, they put your plate in there as an associated vehicle. They can run that plate and go, oh, Bill was at this intersection at this date and time, let's say it was a month ago. We don't know where you went, but if it was a frequent pattern or something like that, then it would say that vehicle was there, not you.
So all the scans get stored.
Correct.
Regardless of whether they're associated with bad stuff.
Correct. And then it gets purged at the county's policy. Yes, ma'am.
Can there be a separate purge policy for like if something, would your software allow this for any image that did not hit the criminal nexus or a silver alert or an amber alert, could that be purged in 3 or 5 minutes so it's not stored? While the stuff that hits the criminal nexus or the silver or amber alert is stored for however long that the policy says?
We can go down to scanning it against a wanted list, and that's it. You can go down granular as that. But it is very customizable.
Scanning could be eliminated from storage within 5 minutes. Say.
It could be.
I think that's where the policy comes in.
Correct.
And setting the appropriate limit, which is kind of.
Right.
Sir, you had a question? Sir?
You mentioned earlier about how many cameras are in the county.
There are a number of cameras. I don't have exact count, but there are a number of cameras throughout Kootenai County proper, being Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, and Kootenai County.
And who pays for those?
Those agencies pay for their own cameras and have their own policies. Sure.
And how do you get paid?
I get paid by Motorola.
And Motorola owns all the data that these cameras are collecting.
Motorola stores the data. The customer owns the data.
Do you know how much the cameras plus the software costs per camera?
There's a bunch of different cameras. So, for example, a fixed highway camera that current market value is probably $6,000 with a $500 a year license fee.
Usually you can follow the money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so again, I just want to stick to questions, folks.
Ma'am, you had a
Mr.
question?
Garwood is a surprise to me. Glad he's here to answer these questions. But I do, again, want to be respectful and, so he can answer the questions.
Yes, ma'am.
So are you the sales rep for Motorola that's selling the software to Kootenai County Sheriff's Department?
I am not the sales rep. We have a third-party vendor that sells to Kootenai County.
Okay, and I was curious, so you mentioned you worked for law enforcement. Were you with the Sheriff's Department here?
Nope.
Okay, no, I was just curious. Thank you for your service.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Yes.
So since you don't own the data, but you just store it, if you were to get, say, a warrant or something from the federal government, wouldn't you, because you were the holder of it, wouldn't you be legally obligated to give it?
Yes. We would not. That goes down to, we don't own it. We store it. So they would have to go to the owner. As far as I know.
So again, the question was would Motorola be the one to fulfill a warrant request? But it would go back to the company who owned the data. In this case, it'd be Kootenai County Sheriff's, and then the warrant would be filled through the sheriff's office.
But we were told that they sell it to the so-and-so and then.
Okay, that's the commercial, not the law enforcement policy. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
This is really for Leslie, but I want to circle back to Leslie Cole's question. And she asked everybody in the room, how many are for this system? And I don't think one person raised their hand.
I think she specifically asked how many are for more surveillance.
Okay. Well, that's the one.
I meant the same thing.
So how many people want this system that we're talking about right here? Does anybody want anybody? Several wants it. Okay. One.
Okay, guys, we're starting
Yes,
to
ma'am.
get off a little bit. We're
My point, wait, I'm not finished, can I just finish? My point is, how many people, how many residents do you need to hear from in opposition of all this surveillance before our elected officials will take us seriously? Because we handled the shutting down the traffic management center. We thought there were over 300 people. We flooded the rooms. But a year later, almost to the exact date, KMPO commissioners approved a sneaky little way of getting the TMC introduced again. So I think, if I can speak for most of the people in the room, we are frustrated and we're not being heard. And we had this meeting about the LPRs. Everybody in the room seemed to be consistently in opposition of them, and we still had the budget passed. So I guess my question is, as the only representative here, how many people do you need to hear from to know that we are serious about not wanting surveillance?
I only needed to hear from my own family. I only needed to hear from my own family. So it's just a matter of how we go, how we move forward. I like the idea of having, like Ms. Hall suggested, that we look at ordinances. And I especially want to look at data retention ordinances, not just for this particular issue, but kind of more throughout the county, because we do collect data on all kinds of different things throughout the county, not just law enforcement. So I'd like to look at that. All right, so hang on one second. So Mr. Garwood is still up here answering questions unless he's done.
I'm leaning against the thing because I had knee surgery a week ago Monday, so I'm not being rude and having poor posture, but
Okay.
I'm here for you guys. So.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Garwood specific to this system that the Sheriff's Department has brought forward?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Your storage, but is there a federal requirement that Motorola retain that storage is the statutory requirement to retain that storage in a zipped file, archived somewhere?
Not that I'm aware of. My understanding is that the customer owns the data, they control the data, and when they purge it, they purge it. Sir.
I just want to ask Leslie a question.
Okay, so because I'll excuse Mr. Garwood if we're done.
Do you have a question for me, sir? That's good. I'm fine.
Feel about this type of stuff, like y'all, I just want to say this. So, you're saying that the newer cameras are new technology that can do a lot more things like that. My question is, and I understand it, there's a small sliver of me that says, yeah, that sounds kind of good, but here's the thing. Back in the 70s, actually the 60s, and maybe even like the 50s, but let's just go with the 70s. An SR-71 at 80,000 feet would take a picture going Mach 3.5. The headlines in the newspaper back in the 70s. The satellites today can pick out a face in a stadium in a matter of seconds. So my question is this: with all this wonderful technology, why do we have 8 million children each and every year taken, and 800,000 in the U.S. taken? If all this technology is good, or does it serve only a particular part of the government?
You know what? I like your question, and I'll tell you, you as well as I have we've done it for a long time, And I think you and I are both in it for the greater good. I got to take a lot of bad people to jail, and I enjoyed every minute of it. I use a lot of technology because, unfortunately for us in this day and age with our budgets, we don't have the officers and the deputies that we used to have. The population is out of control, and we just can't manage it. So technology has taken place with some of that. Now, does it fall into the wrong hands? 100% agree. And I'll be honest with you, like I said, I've been doing this a long time. My wife was a prosecutor. She prosecuted sexual assault cases, which still, she's got issues to deal with too, right? We all have baggage. But when it comes down to doing the right thing, I wouldn't be doing this if it was the wrong thing for me. And I get paid. Okay. I live in Kootenai County. I'm comfortable. It's great. But it's a retirement job, and I enjoy the customers I work with. I live here too. That's the best part about it. And I love this place. And I'm telling you, there's been some great cases that nobody's aware of that's been solved by LPR. Matter of fact, yesterday, Coeur d'Alene PD arrested a serial burglar throughout the United States that was working with the FBI who couldn't catch this guy. Coeur d'Alene got him on an LPR camera for burglarizing country clubs, golf clubs here. I mean, we start talking about what's real. One of the fallbacks is, and I'll use an example, Leslie, is we had that escaped prisoner from Boise, 6 months ago. They ambushed the guards, shot him. I was just reading an article today that one of the co-conspirators rolled over on him and was cooperating and testifying. So they had the plate to that vehicle they took off in. And they went right up through Horseshoe Bend, right up through McCall, right up through Adams County, Orofino, killed 2 people, and then came back down to Twin Falls. McCall's testing LPR camera right now. Adams County is going to get it and test it after the fact because they have a couple ways in their county, a couple ways out. If we could have got those guys before they killed somebody, is that doing the right thing, Jim? That's what we signed up for, right?
I agree with you. I agree that there's great potential.
Correct.
I'm saying is that what I worry about, going through things that the normal people don't know, is that I do know that there is this shadow government and shadow individuals that take advantage of that. They want to know who. And someone like myself who has a big informative mouth, you can track me every second.
I can respect that. Right.
You won't know. And I think you're an honorable man. I have no need to do it all. But it's who's pretending. The corporate level, the government level, that's what I worry about. Because you say some of the cameras are top cameras. That doesn't mean that all 8 of them are 360.
Yeah, and those other cameras that are in the intersections, right, those are not LPR cameras. There's very few LPR cameras in comparison to the traffic cameras, the fixed cameras, the push-to-zoom cameras at Walmart. Those are not Motorola cameras. Those are not LPR cameras. There's very few because, like we talked about, they're not cheap. So.
Okay. Right.
Was
All
there
right,
another
so
question?
let's
Sir,
keep on.
did you have a question for me?
Yeah, perhaps I misunderstood. I thought I heard a few minutes ago that the software was installed in these cameras. How did the camera catch the burglar just a couple of days ago?
That was Coeur d'Alene PD, not Kootenai County, and they have fixed cameras.
Yeah, so it was a fixed, not a mobile.
It's a fixed camera. So the difference, I apologize, a couple different options. There are fixed cameras on traffic poles, traffic lights, different places. It could be on a speed limit sign, whatever. There are trailers. Some of the speed limit trailers can be LPR cameras. That's something that can be offered. There are mobile systems that go on top of the vehicles that have better cameras for catching mostly highway interdiction things. And then there is the in-car camera system, which is what Kootenai has. It has a dual lens, a telephoto and a wide-angle lens. It's designed for officers and recording car stops and different events that happen in front of the vehicles. The one lens in that can pick up and recognize alphanumeric characters. That's what we're talking about. The plate in that vehicle that was related to those burglaries was a fixed camera owned by the city of Coeur d'Alene and Coeur d'Alene Police Department, not Kootenai County. But my point is, it's here. It's happening here. I-90 is a corridor you guys have no idea about. And there's so much dope and human smuggling going through here, it's not even funny. Yeah, yes, sir.
So with the jurisdiction, when it changes from outside our county to, such as you mentioned on the I-90, and then you move into state and federal territory, and as we know, they catch people all the time with the Amber Alerts and interstate crimes, and I've seen the cameras myself. I guess what I'm asking, like, are on the 90 and interstates, are those perhaps Motorola cameras? And my other concern is, I'd like to hear, since you're concerned about safety too, being a former law enforcement, is through incrementalism, we're losing our rights day by day. And like facial recognition, for example, in China, through their cameras tracking their vehicles and the citizenry of China, they restrict them from traveling because they're tracked from province to province, how they operate a business. They can't get loans. It's called the social credit score. That is what's coming down here eventually. And I'm concerned, how do we prevent a crime that hasn't happened yet by our own government?
Well, I'll tell you, I am a 15-minute city against that as well. I'm right there with you. Fortunately, we're not in China. We still are in America. So, right. And fortunately, things are going better for us. I will tell you, Kootenai County is a great place to be. I don't see abuse at Kootenai County. I came from some big agencies, and I know a lot of agencies, and I've seen it, so it's not here, which is one of the reasons why I am here and my family is here. I've got 3 kids and a wife, right? So I'm not going someplace that's not safe and it's going to put up I'm not putting up with that nonsense either. Cameras
on the 90?
Yeah, the cameras on the 90. So those are several generations old. Post Falls has a couple newer Motorola Vigilant cameras, but those are all old PIPS Boss systems. They're old cameras. They still work. They're not going to replace them until they fail. They're very effective. We've got some missing persons out of there. We've solved some good crimes out of that. So again, that is, like I said, that's 15 years old, 14, 15 years old stuff. The software's still older software. It's not Vigilant software because they're running the old system. So it's not as good, and the camera's not as good. Facial recognition, that gives me the heebs as well. We don't have any facial recognition stuff that we sell or use. Their technology's there, sure, but it has to be paid for, and trust me, no one's going to pay for that because that's expensive too. I can imagine how expensive. I don't even know how expensive it is. Nobody even talks it. So I'm blessed to not have to deal with that because I'm not a big fan of that either. But and we just have to remember that the LPR cameras are looking at a license plate and the back of the vehicle. It's not looking at you. It's not taking a picture of you. It doesn't care who you are. It can't do that picture. It's not set up that way. It's not installed that way. I've assisted agencies putting up cameras, and we aim for the back of the vehicle. We aim the camera to the center of the lane, and that's what we're looking for. Period. End of discussion. And it tells us if that vehicle is wanted or the relationship with that vehicle. The investigators can use that data later on. If we have a commercial burglary series here in Kootenai County and the clowns are coming from Washington and we can get a plate, we can start patterning it and try to track them down, or a repo vehicle finds them holed up in an alley at the girlfriend's house in some apartment complex it's not registered to. Maybe that spurs on the investigation for Kootenai County saying, hey, that vehicle involved in her res burglary where all her jewelry was taken, that vehicle's here. We're going to start our investigation there. It doesn't say who it was. It doesn't have a picture of the person. It doesn't do that, but it gives the investigators within Kootenai County, or any agency, therefore, that has that data, to start the investigation and start doing old-fashioned police work like we do all the time. It's a tool, just like helicopters, a force multiplier, right? Jim was talking about cameras and stuff in helicopters or airplanes. Yeah, because it helps solve a staffing problem. So technology is helpful, and it is a hindrance. I 100% agree with all of you. Sir.
Yeah, one quick, please, sir. Again, thank you for your service. Are the cameras in Washington different than the ones we're soliciting here in Idaho?
Yes, the cameras that Spokane County currently uses is a manufacturer called Flock.
And they do take pictures of people in the car.
I'm sorry?
They actually take pictures of people driving the cars, correct?
No, Flock cameras are fashioned and targeting the same concept as us. I received
a red ticket violation, ticket in the mail about 3 years ago. 6:30 in the morning, going down straight, going underneath the railroad tracks. Clear as day, I'm trying to see driving. That's how they verify it was me driving the car.
On a red light camera?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. We don't have red light cameras here.
They do take pictures of people in the drivers.
So that's a red light camera. And most, yeah, it's designed to trip what it does is it syncs with the signal, the traffic signal when it's red. If a vehicle crosses that threshold, then it takes a picture of the front of the vehicle and the person. I've never used them. I've never used that technology. It creeps me out too, but you know, I've heard stories. Those do exist. I don't know what Spokane's doing. Spokane uses Flock license plate reader cameras, which is our direct competitor. Not as good, but it's still the same principle. Sir.
So, do you have any knowledge of the city or county that started with a narrow scope of what you're discussing here, and then later on, for whatever reason, decided to move on to more detailed or more informational or more, you know, rather more information, more advanced system?
So,
my point is what's to say that just because you start with it now, it isn't going to come down in the future? So it's either you cut it out now, or we're slippery slope.
Are we talking with just the license plate reader itself?
Yeah, so the county wants to, the sheriff department wants a narrow scope on what they can do with technology. So are you aware of any city that started like this and then advanced onto a much more sophisticated system that would do a lot more, you know, grabbing more information, whatever, all these different things that are going on?
It's broad, yeah, but I respect it. No, I understand what you're saying. I think the LPR cameras are pretty much limited to LPR. They do that and do it well, but that's it. It's not a live feed. We can't monitor it live. It's a snapshot, and it's.
But my point is that if they have such great success with this, what happens if we, you know, move on to something more sophisticated? What I'm saying is it's a slippery slope there.
Like, could software be updated?
No, not on the LPR cameras, and I know where you're going, and I understand what you're saying. I think what we talked about with Ms. Duncan is the highway districts, which control what's on the roads and the poles that gets installed and those different things. The traffic cameras cannot be manipulated. They cannot be recorded. They can only be monitored live. So you drive by and that's it. It can't zoom per policy, which is auditable. Again, there's a checks and balance system in place. And I know this because NAMPA is a customer and they have a real-time crime center and they have a lot of cameras. They have fixed traffic cameras and they have push-to-zoom traffic cameras they can manipulate. I can't remember the highway district. I think it's Canyon County. Will not allow them, and Idaho Department of Transportation as well, which is part and parcel with policies. You cannot manipulate, move, or zoom a camera or anything on a roadway. You can move it or re-aim it, and it has to stay fixed. You can be monitored, but I can't take a push to zoom, and I'm not a camera guy, so don't crucify me on this. We have a whole different camera system, but surveillance cameras can be zoomed in and different things, some of this different stuff. The policies prevent that, and they can't record it. So there is that. Now, can it get more broad down the road? Sure. I don't know of any, but with regard to license plate readers and exactly what these in-car camera systems are doing.
Yeah, no, I know they can't do anything. I'm just kind of feeling that, like, there could be that potential and that emotional grab for the department to say, well, let's, you know, Matt, you did really well with this. Let's push this aside. Let's broaden it. Let's get something much more that can do a lot more.
Well, I'll tell you this, because I work with the vendor and I work with the Kootenai County, and I have a pretty good understanding of their policies and procedures. As of today, and yeah, elections change 100%. But you also have a board of county commissioners. As of today, right, they're going to have to pass budget requests for that stuff, and that is not cheap. I don't know how much it costs because I don't even know what's out there, right? But I would suspect that there is checks and balances. There's a room full of folks just like you. It's another checks and balance, and that has to be a budget request, line items, justifications, and so on and so forth. So could it happen? Sure. I mean, they're putting rockets into space and bringing them back and landing them on a platform. Who would have thought that 10 years ago, right? So yeah, it's possible. I don't see this county going that way with the current technology we have in the cars. it's limited at what it can do now. And I will go back to Ms. Duncan. Kootenai County was a mobile video customer for a company called WatchGuard. Motorola bought WatchGuard. And at that time, Kootenai County was already a customer using their body cameras and using their in-car camera systems. Old technology, we revamped it, put better lenses in, better technology, better storage, more robust for the patrol cars because the deputies beat the heck out of everything so they can last longer. These are replacement cameras for the old cameras in the new vehicles. And from what I know, and it was brought up, they are built, the cars are bought and they're built in Utah because they have a vendor down there that works very well with Kootenai County with their radio systems, lighting system, cages, and all the equipment that goes in a police vehicle. Unfortunately for us, and this is a business opportunity for those out there, we don't have a very good police vehicle upfitting vendor here in the county or even in Spokane. Day Wireless is probably the closest, who is the vendor that sells to Kootenai County. Their nearest installation shop is in Pasco. So, but with that being said, we have warranties on vehicles. We have a lot of things that are done that builder covers. So not a bad financial move when they're building a bunch of cars. It works out in their best interest. And that's why those are built there, because it's a better deal. They're saving money by going out of state. I wish we had a better vendor here in town. That'd be great, and keep the money here 100%. But unfortunately, we don't have that. Yes, ma'am.
Could Motorola at some point in time decide to sell the contract to another company? You know, like home mortgages, like one day it's with this company and the next day it goes somewhere else?
Yeah, they could, but I'll be honest with you, they're probably making a heck of a lot of money. I don't think they're going to give that up. And someone, they could.
That other company could come up with their own policies and procedures that aren't the same as Motorola.
Yeah, and having been in the business long enough, I think one of the things that would happen is the agencies would be, we're going to the next vendor, we're not dealing with that nonsense.
And we're a year by year, so we approve the budget yearly, we sign contracts yearly. Even if it's a multi-year contract, we still have an out clause in there, non-appropriation clause. So it really is budget year by year. And this is where I didn't see a lot of people during the entire budget process. It was great that I had a lot of people come that night on when we approved the budget. But we're having these conversations for at least 2 or 3 months and at least 2 to 3 times a week. So that's when it would have been great for people to have chimed in more like, oh, wow, I see that, this, you guys want, 15 more pickup trucks. What happened to the last 15? And it's better for you guys to be involved all along the way, because at the last minute, I was truly panicked about not passing the budget. And we still passed a budget, and we were $400,000 short of our jail medical. So I'm still, I have my list, and I'm just waiting to bring it forward about where we might be able to look for cuts so we can actually provide something we have to by state law, and that is medical for inmates. So it's a big process.
Clarify, now that you passed the budget for the LPRs, and I know you have to have another meeting to distribute it, but how long does Morris have to keep trying to get this approved? A year?
Well, yeah, as long as the budget process, in that budget year.
So as residents in the community, we're going to have to be on top of this constantly, because he can sneak it in at any time without.
How many in here, and I think the person might have left, how many read our business meetings every week?
Yeah, this is all kind of a full-time job, and we're
Yeah.
not.
No, but it's not. So I literally, I saw 3 hands go up, and I know a couple other people who were here earlier who actually just every Friday it comes out. I know, because I get the phone calls. What the heck is this? Or do you need me to show up? Or whatever the question is. Sure. But your sheriff is elected, so you can reach out to him and contact him. So, okay. So, are there any more questions for Mr. Garwood? I don't see any more hands. So,
And just so you guys know, it was brought up that Google owns Motorola. It does not. Motorola is traded on the New York Stock Exchange as Motorola, and it's wholly owned, and it's a business. It's a massive business. It's been in business since 1928, I think. So, I mean, our radio was on the moon when the first moon rover went up. So it's been around a long time. I don't see them selling. They buy stuff more than they sell stuff. So I think we're going to be good.
Last question.
Yes, sir.
So I wanted to hear all of the information that you had to share, and I appreciate you coming up and doing that. Earlier, first of all, for those of you not aware, I'm not a fan of plate readers. What I do know is the reality of there is a budget item that's been approved for them to expand and adopt the software and upgrade the system so they can use them as plate readers. And what I was merely suggesting was there may be a way where the public is more involved in developing the policy should they decide to release the money, and this would be a good way to hinge and make it contingent and say, okay, we're going to make a decision about releasing the money, but we want citizens involved in understanding the policy the sheriff has come up with. They should see it, they should have input, and then it comes back for the commissioner's consideration with the public having input there again. That was all I was suggesting. I don't favor these. I don't like them. But I do have a question for you about, in this plate reading data, it sounds like you would agree with me that it's all in the policy. If you're going to use these things, you need to have the policies in place to control how they get used, for what purpose, and how long the data is retained. You'd agree with me. That's essential.
Yes.
And the company has some policies, but those policies, the data is owned by the county or whoever the government entity is. You don't own it. You just offer the server to store it.
Correct.
And you are controlled by their retention policy.
It's interesting because I've had this discussion with Under Sheriff Nelson on how to go about doing it. And the policy that they create is controlled by them. They have administrative rights to the data. Motorola does not. I cannot get into Kootenai County's policy because I'm not a police officer. I don't have rights to get in there. Even if I did, I would have to be allowed in by them.
Right. So there's no access rights for someone in Motorola per the policy of the county. You don't have any access rights.
Correct. And what we do offer is we have a couple individuals that are retired investigators that if Kootenai County says, hey, we're stumped, we need help investigating this crime related to this plate, we're going to give you authorization to help us on a case-by-case basis.
Right.
And then they're not allowed in there. So I'm not allowed in any of that. Motorola employees are not allowed in any of that, and we don't have access to that.
In your experience with other places, is there a particular sheriff's department or state law enforcement or regional law enforcement agency that has a policy that you've seen and are familiar with that you might commend for the county to consider as a good one that balances the rights of the public and privacy, but at the same time, the legitimate needs of law enforcement? Any exemplars out there that stand out as shining
We've
examples?
provided some for the county to use.
And they are?
A couple from Southern California that has
San Diego, perhaps?
I know Santa Ana, could be San Diego. There's a number of them, and California is extremely restrictive. Matter of fact, and there's data sharing. California will not allow data shared outside of the state if it's obtained in the state. It's a state statute. So there's a lot of controls and regulations.
Like their automated regional justice information system, ARJUS, their acceptable use policy for regional license plate reader systems.
Sure.
Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you say you've provided exemplars of this to
Counties
the county?
obtained a bunch of them, so they're creating. I think that their policy is going to be very well written. I know the undersheriff has used these camera systems in his previous law enforcement career, so he has a very intimate knowledge of it, the benefits. He also understands what potentially could be the drawbacks, and obviously he's very aware and astute as to what's going on here.
And would you agree with the scheme that I'm laying out, which is it would be good to have some citizens involved as that is being crafted who had that kind of input, the early review and input, people who are appointed by the commissioners as citizens to sit with the sheriff, go over that. Would you agree that that is a decent template?
I don't see a problem with that at all.
Right.
Hang on one second. Jonathan, I'm going to call on
Thank you.
People on Zoom. I think there's 2 folks. Do they have any questions or comments?
To our people on Zoom, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask a question, looks like we have Daniel?
But I'm going to let you sit down and.
I'm okay. It's.
You all right? Okay.
I'm flamingo in this thing, so it's all good.
Right. I think it's David or Michael. Oh. All right. Well, if they chime in, then we'll know. But thank you. I
Any other
really
questions?
appreciate you.
Well, it's up. I'm sorry.
I think it's going to.
Be here all night.
We could be here all night, actually.
I could talk to you after, too.
You mentioned that the data, Motorola stores the data. Do they actually have their own servers, or is that contracted out to somebody like Amazon?
It's cloud-based servers that we offer, that we host the data on. It's controlled by government Azure servers, and Microsoft and us manage it.
Which the team
Okay.
between Motorola and Microsoft or Amazon or the federal.
Hey, whatever. I don't know what the deals.
No, I'm just saying, and I want to thank you because you're taking a beating from us, but I appreciate you for being in your shoes. But data centers, and this is where we all need to.
So I'm going to actually let you come and get recorded. So yes, if you want to hang out. So
And it's not typically a data center. I mean, it's controlled by us. I mean, it's not controlled by others. It's not controlled by third party. We have our hands in it. So
right, but again, stop. Because YouTube.
Yeah.
The people on YouTube want. Yes, and I'm going to. Yes, I want you to come up. Yes.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Thank you. Thank you.
So just so everybody knows and understands data centers, so they used to be housed within the corporations. The corporations had firewalls. That moved. The corporations all signed it off to take it to the cloud, which is owned by Microsoft, Amazon, and the federal government. Whatever goes into those data centers is not private. Go back. You can go back and look at the dark web. Anybody can go look at the dark web from when it transitioned. That data has always been there and still is, and it's still being utilized. What I question is the terms and conditions between these corporations into the cloud. What just happened a few months ago or weeks ago when the cloud went down? Banks went down, the airports went down. That's all controlled by the cloud. We have to understand that. Not only that, but every single one of us that Googles, does a search, gets on your phone, does a text, you have your own individual little box. It's all being tracked and traced for social credit scoring, just like China. So that is something to take into consideration when we look at softwares like this. And again, this is not his. He's just a rep for Motorola. This is all of us as a society, a human race, to be very concerned about. It's what Elon Musk has said. It's good and evil, and there's both. It's just whoever's jiggling the. And that's where the federal government is never putting, black and white regulations down on the data that is being tracked and traced and stored. There is not one ounce of data that is not. I mean, it can all be hacked. It can all be traced. You can download a podcast and people got wiped off the web. So it's never, ever, ever 100% secure. So how do you know this might be way your credentials? Well, yeah.
Okay, hang on 1 sec. I want you to have a microphone. hang on. It's important, so I want you to, yeah. Oh, there you go.
Thank you. It's something to be very concerned about no matter what, because it's just the evolution of where we are in technology. And AI is going to be a part of our lives from here on out. Just get used to that. There is no anonymity. And whatever data that you type, text, talk, cameras, everything, even though Motorola believes in the terms and conditions between, the product, once they put it into the cloud, if they're not housing it within their own data servers, whether that even in their own data servers, because most corporations have just gone to the cloud. A lot of them are reversing that. Even there's local companies here that I've met with that are housing their own data centers because it is more secure. They can firewall it, they can control it, they can offload it. Data centers, for instance, all telecom has a data center, and then they offload. They have multiple data centers around the world in case there's an environmental, situation, a hurricane, and it's going to offload into all these different areas, and it banks it. And then like Bank of America, Motorola, and all of them have hard copies, reels, that they offload into dry docks, huge warehouses. So again, it's never secure.
And who did you work for and how you did this?
Yeah, that'd be Microsoft, and I also worked for a couple of different data centers in the past. And I've built them. I understand the technology. I understand how it's transitioned. I understand that the corporations got pay to play. They had to offload their technology because it's all going into the cloud for what? For track and trace. It's there. And what happens is, for instance, an algorithm, it's AI. You have your box, okay? Marcy has her box in the cloud. And no matter what I do, when I go onto a search engine and I search, or if I go into ChatGPT and I ask it a question, or if I'm sitting next to one of you and we both look on Amazon, and we both just put in the same exact thing into Amazon, you're going to get a different algorithm and a different answer than I'm going to get. They're going to bring up all the options for us. Try it. Try it at home. It will bring up what you are based on your search engine and what you've purchased. That's all in the will of AI, and it's all grabbing this information. So when you go out to the search engines and you put in a Google search, or you go into Brave, it's going to algorithm what you've done in the past. It's tracking. There's an IPO on everything, and it's all tracked with you, coming from your computer. So just so you know, none of us are safe. None of us, unless we're completely off grid, and I don't even know if that's possible.
Right. So I do have a question. Are you willing to write a white paper and give some suggestions to community leaders?
Absolutely. The problem is that the federal government hasn't put any regulations. That's what it is in the Supreme Court right now. That's why Elon Musk has brought it up. It's a huge concern for humanity. And that's where we're at. On a local level, I mean, you know, we're kind of the bottom feeders. So it's got to go up there, and I know that it's there. I know they're, you know, doing a lot of research and trying to figure this out. They have been forever. And they just can't, because there's always good and there's evil. So where do you draw the fine line between that? And I understand, you know, everybody's concerns here for track and trace, you know, and that the innocent people feel like they're being, you know, punished. I travel all the time. I didn't know about, you know, TSA, and I'm like,
To my stomach as well.
oh my goodness, and I'm sitting there going, how am I going to now get rid of it? Because, well, I can't, because I already have government background checks, so I'm, I guess, screwed. Anyway, I'd be happy to help any way that I can. I just, you know, like I said, we're the bottom feeders.
Yeah,
you know?
I would like to have more conversations with you.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so thank you.
Is this going to fall over?
You can just leave it. Yeah, you can just leave it. And I would like a round of applause for Mr. Garwood, because he did not have to come tonight. So thank you. It is almost past my bedtime, but you guys are here, so I still want to hear from you, but let's keep it rolling. So come on up to the microphone.
You know, step and fetch it, Grammy now. So the only thing I want to say is thank you so much for having this, and thank you for those who spread this out so that we could know to come. I don't know where to look. No one's telling me where to look to come and find you, and someone told me, and I'll be here, and I will not go anywhere from this point forward. But what I want to say is everything everybody said is exactly right. It's in the cloud. It's coming. AI knows everything about you more than you think they know about you or you know yourself. So it's coming. It seems to me, after hearing everything, there is a firewall that we, the bottom feeders, can actually participate in with scopes and experiences like with Microsoft backgrounds or policy, but diggers, not just people who are going to say, I want to have an opinion. You need people that are going to be on a citizen committee, as you said, but not for this just one specific thing. Is there any plan that you're going to have a committee citizen group, an oversight committee, more than 3 people, that can be controlled and swayed very easily? I'm suggesting 5, and that you would be proactive in initiating that, and let us do the background. Let us bring you the sauce. Let us bring you the receipts, no matter how the truth lands. hand you the receipts and say, this is what we found. These are our receipts from where we found it. These are original documents. These are microfiche. These are original videos. These are affidavits. These are signed testimonies. And then you make the decision. And then the people will deal with that however it shakes out. But it feels like before you pass something, before you stop that gavel on the table, that you have people who are passionate about what's best in general for the community, and that as citizens, we can be your firewall. We can stand there and say, okay, I might not agree with it, but this is the way it looks, and this is what pans out. And we give it to you, and you make the decisions you were elected to do. Yeah. And so just please give greater thought to the firewall. That is the last-ditch effort before you say approved. Yeah. And if you still say approved in spite of the sauce and the receipts, well, then the paperwork is there for anybody that wants to look at it. Wow, 90% of this and that, and 100% of the people who attended said no, and it still was voted in. I wonder why. So it's a way to watch your back, and it's a way to hold your feet to the fire. And when people are impartial, then we have democracy in our republic. Thank you.
Yes,
So-
thank you.
Two things on that. Leslie, are there any existing boards or committees within the county that are specifically citizen committees that deal with data issues at the county level? Is there anything like that?
Not yet.
Perhaps the county might be forward-thinking in creating one of the first like that, along with what Grammy's saying, right?
Yes.
Two, another thing is, before budget items come forward at all and get included in the budget, is there a process, a policy in the county for how something that has far-reaching privacy right implications, that they have to meet a certain threshold before it can be included in the budget, such as license plate readers, but it could be anything, not to pick on just the sheriff. Is there a policy like that?
Yeah, so part of the issue is we have thousands and thousands of, we have a $130 million budget, so there's thousands of things purchased. So until the public says, wait, we don't like that, then how am I supposed to know? So
These are privacy
well,
type technology.
I understand that. We're now narrowing the focus to maybe a citizens committee that can help with privacy issues, with data retention issues, with the information, the stuff that we talked about tonight, which I am very excited because that was kind of one of my ideas. I didn't want to just talk about license plate readers. I wanted to talk about all of it. And I'm so glad that Marcy came. That's Marcy, right? Yes. And to help educate us, because that's what it is. It's an education. And again, we are of the people, for the people, by the people, and forgive me if I got those in the wrong order. But that's why I'm here really only. I'm not here for a stepping stone. I'm not here for my ego. Trust me, I'm not here for my health. So yeah, I really care about people. I care about rights, right? Just being protected, private property rights, and your ability to move about and live your life the way you want to. So I'm very excited about what came out of tonight. And again, especially Grammy, write down what your idea is, because I'm not the idea man. I am the implementer, right? I do have occasional good ideas, but mostly I call my 25 circle of subject matter experts. And I'm going to kind of dime you out. You're one of them. And, therefore, I just usually ask one simple question, and then I get this, which is lovely. But this is just one subject, okay? This is just one thing I do. I have to have the citizens involved. I have to have them reading the agendas and saying, what is this? And so this is of the people, for the people, by the people. I am just a mouthpiece. So
for that commission, for a citizen commission to help advise on privacy and data issues, is that something you would propose to the commission?
I can propose a committee who talks about, who is can be kept up on technology and the most recent Supreme Court cases and things of that nature. I would love to have that, and I can propose that. I can do it on my own. It doesn't necessarily have to be official county. So we'll have more talks about that, but I want to keep going in line. So we got a line here. So, and Bill, if you can't come to the microphone, then I'll
if you can. Okay. Good.
Bob Grossglauser again. I just have a novel idea. It's backward thinking, but I would love to see the county commissioners do something unique in Kootenai County. Maybe create an ordinance that says, hey, we will not gather data or store data on any lawful citizen until we can guarantee 100% the safety of that data, period. And why can't we do something like that? You know, we put our money in a bank and we have an FDIC approved, so we know if the money goes away, we got some insurance. How about our data that affects our very lives? So I think that's possible. I've heard of some counties considering those kind of ordinances or whatever you want to call it, but that would really protect the lawful
You
citizen.
need a state data policy, you're right.
Yeah.
Not only just county, but places like Virginia have a state data privacy act.
Good.
And that's fruitful material to go look at.
Thanks for having this meeting. I just, my thoughts are that I really appreciate how much the gentleman said these are profitable, but I feel like, you know, we could be even more profitable if we had like traffic stops where you had to show your ID and everything every time you went anywhere. We could catch so many more criminals if we did that, you know, or, you know, so to me, it's like, I appreciate that we can catch more criminals, but we would be surveilled, which is what everybody is saying. So I heard you say, Leslie, a minute ago that, or a few minutes ago, that you are for having an ordinance against this data instead of just talking about the, you know, limiting the camera. You know, you've been talking about having, I forget the word you're using, procedures. But I think that if any data is held on all of us, we are being surveilled. And I totally agree with you that we should have an ordinance against all of it instead of talking about these little cameras and this thing. I agree. And there should, do ordinances carry punishments for the people who break them?
Oh, that is a great question. I want to say they can. They can. So.
Can we have punishments for people that break the ordinances, please? Yeah. Big ones.
Yes.
Yeah. So that they're not just a thing that, oh, that's so nice, but we can't do anything about it when you break it. Yeah. We need.
I think it depends, but you're on the right track. And I think there, you know, administratively, let's say there was a policy and somebody accessed the system who shouldn't. Well, administratively, I think there's a kind of civil type thing, like you might get put on suspension, right?
Yeah.
Or you might get fired
no,
if you
punished.
Right,
like
consequences,
civilly,
right?
Like
but in terms of criminally,
fines
I don't
and
know.
jail,
But
things
I
like
mean,
that.
you're on the right track.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that should be in a policy.
Yeah. So I think that if we had a policy that was just like, well, you can't hold this data, then I think this paying for the cameras to do this is useless. Because if you can't hold any of the data, you can't do all of this surveillance, and you can't catch all of these people saying this person was here a month ago or this person was here 2 weeks ago. If our policy is you can't store the data, then it doesn't seem like you should spend money on this license plate readers at all.
Okay, thank you. All right, Bill?
So I just wanted to ask a procedural thing. So if there were a policy and there were time limits and we want to purge it in 10 minutes or 10 days or 10 months, how easy or difficult and how much time would it take for that policy to change to something else? So you have a policy and it's working or not working and people come in, we don't like that policy, you want to make it shorter or longer. That whole process, how long does that take?
It can be as few as a couple days. Oh. So typically, it takes a lot longer than that, but it would only take a couple days for 2 of the 3 commissioners to say, we want this policy changed, here's what we want, legal writes it up, and then brings it back to us at a properly noticed meeting to have it changed. Now, again, I've worked on policies for years, and finally, have been able to bring them forward. So it can take a long time, but it can be as short as just a couple days.
So if you were to do this, would you be able to publicly notice a meeting during which this specific policy is going to be discussed and voted on that will affect how all these cameras are going to work, how long they're stored, and all the details about that?
Yeah, so we can work with the communications coordinator and flag certain issues. So let's just say that it's the Motorola contract. So when he knows, because he posts a lot of our stuff, when he knows this, then he can put out a Facebook post and say, hey, everybody, on Tuesday, this is on the agenda. So that is one way to do it.
You know, and I just a little comment. I just noticed that people ask the question, how many people will it take to convince the decision makers to make a different decision than what they're leaning towards? And I was thinking, well, the county's got, what, 175,000 people?
185.
185,000 people? So it might take 50,000 of them to get enough attention going. Like that thing at the KMPO, when I was there, this place was jam-packed, and it was almost unanimous.
Yeah. And once
to
again,
get them to move.
Right. And once again, with the Board of County Commissioners, that's why I like this setup and was not for the change in form of county government, is that every 2 years you can replace the majority of the board. So that's why it's a really good form of government. So you have those checks and balances. KMPO, that's a whole different thing. You have people on there who are appointed. Most of them are elected, but you have, I think, at least one or two who are appointed. So when you get to those regional organizations, they're much, much more difficult to handle. So because essentially you can have, like a board of us 3 commissioners, we've got one commissioner on there now who's going to vote a certain way, but maybe the 2 commissioners say, well, no, we want to replace that commissioner with another one who's going to vote a different way. So it's much more complicated, and this is why Panhandle Health District was an issue too 4 years ago, because you have people who are appointed there that were not elected, and it's a little bit more complicated in order to get the direct representation and the direct response from those bodies. Sorry, long-winded answer.
One thing following up on the policy though, here, let's just say it's a license plate reader policy, right? That comes from the sheriff, doesn't it? That falls in the sheriff's wheelhouse to develop that policy?
Yeah.
And then does it come to the commissioners for approval? Or is
some
it
of
just
them
within
do,
his
some
wheelhouse?
of them don't.
Well, like something like this.
So, well, yes, because I asked to see the policy before I would.
Right, so there's your leverage is the budget, right? Okay.
Yeah, I promise one last thing.
Okay, I don't believe you, Amy, but
Unless
I'm happy to hear you.
nobody else talk, and then we could just be done.
If I get follow up for one thing on just that
Yes.
thought. So will the public be able to see the sheriff's policy prior to it coming forward to the commissioners?
I can ask that happen. I mean, that's all I can do is ask. Well, the sheriff, I mean, email him tomorrow, email him tonight. We would like to see this policy, and you can make a public records request for it. As soon as this policy is available in draft form, drafts are public records, then they need to release that to you. Hey, I did not recommend that. I just said that's just a way to do it, okay? So
before
It's great that we're talking about policy, but like I said an hour ago, the policy is not going to protect us from software updates, from Motorola contracts, if the contract gets sold to another company, if the federal government comes into play, if we have a new sheriff that comes in, if we have new county commissioners, or hacking, or the
all
cloud.
right, Amy, you're getting a little excited.
So policy, we could talk about it all day long, but it's not going to protect us from all those things. So to me, the policy is a big waste of time. And at the end of the day, I don't want it at all. That's it. I'm done.
Thank you. Hey, anyone else, since we're almost an hour over? That's it? So Kootenai County we're not responsible for those. So yes, you can ask those governing agencies to have a meeting about the ones who have that. So identifying them is probably your first step. Finding out who owns the cameras on which things, and I have a start. I have a start that I can give you for some of those locations. So thank you guys. I really didn't expect to do this, but